Lumiere Place Casino, St. Louis, June 2nd, 2014. A row of slot machines starts doing the one thing they were built never to do. They start losing money. No jackpot, no alarm. Over 2 days, machines engineered to keep 7 cents of every dollar quietly hand back more than $21,000. A negative hold the casino's own accountants can't reconcile. There's a man on the tape. Black hair, polo zip-up, a small square purse. He sits, plays, walks away. Minutes later, he returns to the same machine and wins. Again and again. By every rule in the building, he's just a man playing the slots. But the phone in his pocket is telling him, to the fraction of a second, exactly when to press the button. He isn't hoping the machine pays. He's being told it will, and he isn't the important part. The real work is 5,000 miles away. A St. Petersburg apartment, a wall of monitors, a mathematician who calls himself Alex. He and his team didn't break into the machine. They didn't rewrite its code. They understood it better than the company that built it. So how do you beat a machine engineered to be unbeatable? And what was happening in the 4 seconds between this man sitting down and walking away rich? A slot machine isn't selling cherries or sevens. It's selling randomness. It's a computer, and its only real job is to produce a number nobody can predict. Because if you could predict the number, you'd only ever bet when you knew you'd win. And the casino would be finished. That single guarantee is the entire business. And that guarantee isn't based on luck. It's based on mathematics so stable it feels like law. Casinos don't win because players lose in bursts. They win because over millions of spins, the system always drifts back to the same edge. Not today, not tomorrow, but always. That slow, certain return is what makes every flashing light, every jackpot sound, every celebration inside a casino completely controlled. Here's the problem. A computer can't be random. It does exactly what it's told, one instruction at a time. So it fakes it using software called a pseudo-random number generator. Pseudo, meaning false. The numbers look random. They pass every test for randomness. But they're calculated. Think of it like a phone book thousands of pages long, numbers in a fixed order that never changes. To anyone who's never seen it, the numbers look random, but the book is the same every time if you have a copy. And you know which line the machine is reading right now. The random number about to come up isn't random to you at all. You're reading ahead, and the math inside those machines was never really a secret. Its foundations had been printed decades earlier, in the open. In textbooks, any student could pull off a shelf. Anyone could read it. Almost no one in the casino industry ever had. To read the book, you'd first have to get inside the machine. And nobody could. Until, on the other side of the world, someone handed the machines out for free. In 2009, Russia banned almost all gambling. Thousands of casinos were ordered to close, and the country was suddenly full of slot machines worth almost nothing. Most people saw scrap. A small group in St. Petersburg saw a laboratory. They bought the discarded machines cheap and took them home. And now they had the one thing that had always been out of reach. They could open a machine, read its memory, trace its code, and copy out the secret book of numbers hidden inside. Alex was no outsider. By his own account, he'd been hired by a casino to tune a set of Novomatic machines to quietly adjust how much they paid out. When he noticed the pseudo-random generator could be read, he stopped fixing machines and started predicting them. The first cracks showed up not in America, but across Central and Eastern Europe. By early 2011, casinos were reporting Novomatic machines paying out impossibly often. Engineers inspected them and found nothing wrong. No tampering, no damage. In a remarkable admission, the manufacturer warned its customers that, through careful observation of the games, someone might be able to identify a pattern in the results. The company was admitting the book could be read. But knowing the book isn't enough, because the machine doesn't read it from page 1. Where it starts, the exact line it's on at any instant, depends on the precise moment. down to fractions of a second, that it powers on and runs. Two identical machines side by side are reading different pages. You know the book. You just don't know what page this machine is on, and that gap is everything. Even if your model is perfect, one wrong millisecond means you're reading the wrong future. A spin that should pay becomes a loss. A prediction becomes noise. Casinos don't need randomness to be perfect. They only need it to be slightly faster than you can think. That's enough to bury you. This is where most people misunderstand it. The breakthrough wasn't predicting the machine, it was syncing with it. They didn't need perfect foresight. They needed alignment. A narrow window where human action and machine timing overlapped just long enough to extract value before randomness could reassert itself. That window was small, but it was repeatable. Solving that on a laptop in front of a slot machine is exactly what casino security is trained to notice. So the operation split the problem in two: the thinking in Russia, the acting on the floor. 1. An agent sits at a machine, plays it clean, and films the screen, around 24 spins, then leaves. At Lumiere Place, Believe played Star Drifter and Pelican Pete, two aristocrat games on a processor the team had already cracked. 2. The footage flies to St. Petersburg, where the team watches those spins and calculates exactly where in the sequence the machine currently sits. They find its place in the book. 3. Knowing its place, they know its future. Which spins pay, and precisely when, and push that timing back to a custom app on the agent's phone. And here's where it should have collapsed. A human can't watch a screen and hit a button on a 100 millisecond cue. Nobody can. So they stopped relying on the human eye altogether. The human never reacts. The system reacts through him. 4. He returns, and the phone runs him. A quarter second before a winning spin, it buzzes in his pocket. Just long enough for a human to feel it and press. He isn't guessing. He's being told. To anyone watching, he's a lucky man tapping a screen. In reality, he's the last inch of a machine that reaches all the way to St. Petersburg. It was never a big win. An agent might turn $20 into $1,300, then move on. Small enough to look like luck, repeated across cities, it added up. An operative could pull in more than $10,000 a day, a crew of 4, $250,000 a week. And almost none of it stayed with them. The money flowed back to St. Petersburg. The men on the floor weren't partners. They were couriers. They were not the first. In 1995, a man did it. And he worked for the government. Ronald Dale Harris was a programmer for the Nevada Gaming Control Board, one of a handful trusted to open the machines and confirm they were honest, which gave him what no outsider had: legitimate access to the code inside. Harris learned to predict a Keno game's numbers before they were drawn, and the method worked flawlessly. What killed it was a person. He sent an associate to cash a $100,000 ticket in Atlantic City, a win too big, collected by a man with no ID and no way to explain it. The math was invisible. The people were not. Harris proved the math was beatable. 20 years later, St. Petersburg proved it was scalable, and one of them was about to make the same human mistake that sank Harris. By 2014, the operation was global, quiet, and enormously profitable. Its strength was that it was invisible. Dozens of agents in California, Romania, Macau, Poland, Peru, who never stayed long or came back to the same floor twice. The system only survived if the people stayed ghosts. And then, in St. Louis, they made a mistake. Security at Lumiere Place pulled the tapes and found the man in the polo zip-up. By the time they traced him through rental car records to a name, Murat Bliv, a 37-year-old Russian national, he'd already flown out of the country on June 6th. But one casino security expert kept comparing notes across the industry. Another face, same method, different casino. Then another. Not one lucky gambler, a pattern, 24 faces, one operation. And 2 of Bliv's accomplices, he found, had never left. They'd gone west to a casino in California. That's where it broke open. On July 14th, investigators detained one of them and seized 4 cell phones. That's when it stopped being theory. 4 phones, dozens of casino logs, identical timing patterns across countries. The same behavior repeating with machine precision. Not gambling variance, not luck. A coordinated system. For the first time, investigators weren't looking for cheaters. They were looking at an infrastructure, combined with what Missouri and Europe already knew. Those phones finally explained the whole method. What they needed now was to catch a crew in the act, which required the operation to do the one thing it never should. After Believe was burned in St. Louis, his face on file, his name known, they had every reason to leave him in Russia, and that's where it should have ended. Instead, they made the same decision twice. They sent him back into the exact country where he was a marked man. On December 3, 2014, Believe flew into Chicago and met 3 other men. Ivan Gudilov, Igor Lavrenov, and Yevgeny Nazarov. December 10th, security at Hollywood Casino in St. Louis recognized the face they'd been warned about. This time there was no flight home. The 4-man crew was arrested, and because they'd worked across state lines, it was now a federal case. Whatever investigators expected to find on Believe, the square purse held nothing but a phone and a charger. The weapon was never in his hands. It was 5,000 miles away. In 2016, the architect stepped partway into the light, on his own terms, speaking to a journalist only as Alex. He claimed he'd run the operation for years and made millions. And he had a proposal. Tired of the legal headaches, he approached the very company whose machines he'd been beating, the Australian manufacturer Aristocrat, and offered to stop and to help fix the flaw for 8 figures. When they hesitated, the threat underneath became clear. The same knowledge in a competitor's hands or the public's would cost far more. Aristocrat confirmed it received an extortion attempt, refused to pay, and referred it to the authorities. His argument was 2 sentences. They never touched the machines. They just understood them sooner than anyone else. So where was the crime? 3 of the arrested men, including Believe, took plea deals, roughly 2 years, then deportation. But the men who were caught were never the men who mattered. The agents were couriers, interchangeable. The intelligence lived 5,000 miles away, in mines that never touched an American slot machine and never left Russia. When the crew fell, the operation didn't. It just lost 4 replaceable pieces. The brain was never in the building, and that's what made the system so hard to see. There was no kingpin at a table, no mastermind inside a casino, no single moment investigators could point to and say, this is where it happens. It was distributed intelligence. Prediction in one country, execution in another, money moving everywhere in between. You could arrest the part you could see. The part that mattered never entered the building. Call them cheaters if you want. The courts did. And the men who got caught were convicted. But they didn't break the machine or smuggle in a device. They watched it do exactly what it was built to do, and understood it more completely than the people who built it. The machine promised randomness. They proved it was a promise it could never keep. That's why there's still no clean fix. The exact model Believe exploited, the Aristocrat Mark VI, didn't vanish when he was arrested. Tens of thousands stayed on floors, in service years later, because pulling every machine was never going to happen. Darren Hoke, the expert who tracked the group for years, was blunt. A real fix wasn't coming. The only defense was a guard watching for the one tell the method can't hide. A finger that lingers half a second too long above the button, waiting for a buzz. So the machines are still out there. This isn't history. The masterminds were never extradited. They're still in Russia, beyond reach. And somewhere, right now, some version of the same idea is still running. So the next time a wheel spins and you call it luck, remember, someone once looked at that same wheel and read the ending before it landed. The machine was never lying to you. It was speaking a language its makers assumed no one would ever bother to read. Some people bothered.